Okay, hi everyone. My name is Amy Salazar, and I'd like to welcome you to the National Research Collaborative for Foster Alumni in Higher Education's webinar series. We will be recording today's session, so please, I'd like to ask if you can keep your cameras off, and we'll be posting today's webinar along with all of our other webinars on the NRC FAHE website, along with our Facebook page. Before we get started with today's webinar, I'd like to let you know about our next webinar. So our next webinar will be in April. It will be Wednesday, April 6th from noon to 1 Pacific time, which is 3 to 4 Eastern time. And the presenters will be Dr. Judy Havlicek from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Dr. Amy Dworsky from Chapin Hall at University of Chicago, and Alyssa Gitlow from Chapin Hall at University of Chicago. And their presentation is called From Foster Care to Community College, Experiences of Students in Illinois. So for that study, they'll be talking about, they did a mixed methods study to learn more about the experiences of Illinois community college students who are or were in foster care. And some of their findings suggested that despite significant federal and state investments in programs that aim to support or promote post-secondary educational attainment among these populations, students who are or in foster care are not receiving the supports they need to succeed in school from either child welfare or education systems. So I encourage you to join us for that webinar. I'll put the registration link in the chat, and you can also access all of our upcoming webinars on the website. If any of you are not already on our listserv, you can go to the website that you see here on the slide, www.nrc-fahe.org. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's a section that says subscribe. That's how you can join our email list, and then you'll get all of our emails as well as our quarterly newsletter about all things foster care and higher ed. Okay, so today we have a wonderful presenter. Her name is Delrisha White, and she's the founder and principal consultant of Equity, Erudition, Anti-Racism Education. And her presentation today is entitled Historically Black Colleges and Universities Give Foster Youth an Edge. And so during, Delrisha, I'll let you say a little bit about your preferences for if you'd like people to just type in their questions as we go, if you want to answer them as we go along or hold questions to the end, you can give a little guidance about that. But otherwise, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I am super excited to share with you all my point of view on why I believe HBCUs are a really great landing pad for young people in care. Now, before we get started, this is no pressure to anybody, but it does feel really good when I can see people. So if you have the capacity to turn your video on, that would be great. No rush. If not, you're totally fine as well. But I really love the energy that's exchanged when we can interact with each other. Before we get started, I'm going to show you a video from a program that I was featured on that was televised when I was in undergrad. So this is about 10 years old or so. And so I'm going to share with you this video because I think it's really going to frame more of my background, but I think it'll also be interesting to see the trajectory that a young person might experience after having an experience at HBCU. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Welcome, welcome, welcome for those who are just joining us. All right. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let me go ahead. Is the audio okay?
I heard clapping.
Okay, cool.
My name is Delrisha White. I'm studying journalism and media studies, and I attend Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina. So UNCF has done a lot for my life. I have 3 other siblings, me, my sister, and I have 2 brothers. And when we were younger, my mother struggled with taking care of all 4 of us. And so we ended up in foster care with a Latino family in San Jose. And that was way on the opposite side from where I was attending school. So I was getting up at 4 o'clock every single morning just to get to school by 8.
She took a bus to a light rail station to get to school.
I knew I had to do well in school just because that was all I really had control of.
Education always came first to her, like always. She'll stay up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to finish the math homework that's due in 3 days.
I knew that I wanted to go to college, and I knew that I wanted to do something that was different, and so I told myself that I wanted to go out of state and to an historically Black college. I wanted to get something out of going to school with all Black people that I could not get at UC Berkeley.
Bennett was the right choice because he had a strong focus on community and on improving character and developing women into confident and proud professional women. And I think that's absolutely what Delrisha needs and needed, and what a lot of young people need.
I decided I was going to Bennett. However, I had a $5,000 deficit for the bulk of my freshman year until an emergency UNCF scholarship came through. That whole week, hallelujah, running up and down the stairs, it was great. For my internship this summer, I am working for Oracle Corporation. I got it through UNCF. We're in a changing world now. You have to have some type of international experience. And so I'm going to China. While I'm in China, I'm actually going to be doing an internship while I'm abroad.
Now that we see that somebody can get somewhere, it's like, okay, well, let's all do something, put in something.
We might create a change in one individual, but it has a ripple effect throughout all of the people that child interfaces with.
Anybody out there who has the money should donate their last dollar to UNCF because UNCF changes people's lives, seriously.
Okay, so this video, again, this was shot my sophomore year in college. I was at the end of, I was getting ready to transition into, actually, I'll get into those details in just a moment. Let me go ahead and share my screen, share this presentation. And I only have a couple slides here, so I'll just kind of demonstrate why I think this topic, I'm so passionate about this topic. My name is Delrisha. I'm an educator. I started my career in the classroom as a 4th and 5th grade language arts teacher. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of a racial equity education firm called Erudition. I'm a media creative. I'm a 1st-generation double college grad. I graduated from Bennett College in Greensboro, North Carolina for undergrad, and I went to the Harvard Graduate School of Education for my master's degree in education policy and management. And of course, I'm also a former foster youth. Now, as that video alluded, I come from a family, my mother and my father actually were both victims of the 1980s crack epidemic and the war on drugs that basically ravaged Black communities. And as a result of that, my siblings and I were separated, ended up living with family and basically spent the vast majority of our childhoods in care. But we were in kinship care. At different points of our journeys, we were split up because of other traumas that have taken place in different places that we were at. And so our family to this day is very much grappling with a lot of the state-sanctioned violence that was perpetuated on Black families through law and policy. And so today, I have the opportunity as an emancipated foster youth to sit on this side of the table, and I'm not old, right? And I'm not 21, right? I'm 30 years old. I just turned 30. But the perspective that I now have and seeing time behind me has me uniquely positioned. And so I'm really passionate about working with young people now because I'm just far enough away where I had to navigate that experience myself. And so I have a wealth of information I can share with young people, but I'm also, not so far removed. So there's this sweet spot that I kind of occupy. When I decided to pursue college, I knew right away that I wanted to go to an historically Black college. I was passionate about that. And that was because of my experience going to schools I'm from the Bay Area, in public schools here, where my identity and my experience and my culture was not really embraced or celebrated. At the high school that I went to, there were very few Black students who were encouraged to enroll in honors and AP courses. And so I pretty much had to navigate that process by myself without any real guidance, not even from my guidance counselor. And so I found myself in spaces when I was in public schools here where, if we were reading a text and a Black person was centered, or something happened in the text, to the Black person, I was the person that everybody kind of looked to, expecting to respond, right? So it's all these different microaggressions that Black students, and not just Black students, but other students of color, Native American, Latinx folks across the board, Asian American, Pacific Islander folks experience in schools. And so K-12 schools become this really toxic place. And so what you realize is a lot of folks a lot of young people will leave. They'll just exit school. They'll do exactly what they need to do if they meet that bar, right, to graduate 12th grade. And some people obviously exit school before then. And then what happens is a lot of people have this idea that they're not interested in school, when in reality, schools were not created or not designed. Many of our public K-12 schools are not really designed to stimulate an excitement around school. It feels very punitive. And so people just assume that they don't like school. And so what I discovered when I actually graduated high school, I told myself right away I was going to go to an HBCU, and I did everything that I needed to do in order to get there. I was what I would call a tweener. Right. I wasn't excelling because I moved around, and, maybe I had to take summer school a couple times. So I wasn't like an A+ student, but I also wasn't flunking out of my classes because I knew that school was going to be my lever to exiting from this family trauma and from the foster care system at large. And so I made sure that I basically navigated that process. So what I was able to discover in my first year was that there were so many opportunities. When I got to Bennett College, the oldest historically Black college for women in this country, located in Greensboro, North Carolina, which was, again, it's in a whole nother state from where I'm going to school. And at the time, there were no policies in San Francisco around like getting a young person to school out of state. So my social worker had to do a lot of stuff to make sure that I got to where, to make sure that I could even attend. My case was in San Francisco County, and they just didn't have, I graduated at 17. And so technically I was still a ward of the court through the end of my first semester in school. When I was at Bennett College, that was the first time I had ever earned a 4.0. And as I explained, I wasn't like a straight A student, but I also wasn't like failing. I was an in-between student. And I know now, having been a classroom teacher and starting my career in the classroom, that those in-between students are often the ones that slip through the cracks. When students are high achieving, we kind of wrap around those young people and make sure that they have other things to kind of stimulate their growth, right? When students are underachieving, the teacher makes sure that they do everything. The community makes sure that they do everything to make sure that student kind of gets back on track, right? In a perfect world, that's where energy goes. But with that in-between student, there's this kind of attitude that like this person's gonna be okay. And so most of the things, again, that I had to pursue was because I had to find it on my own. And then I got to Bennett College, and it was the first time I ever earned a 4.0 because I was in a department, journalism and media studies department, where I actually got to explore. And the chair of my department was a woman of color, a Black woman specifically, who had made sure that we had everything that we needed in that department to explore, to question, to reason, to try, right? And a lot of foster youth are not in the position where they're empowered to try, where they're empowered to explore without the floor falling under, right? Falling through. And so there's this anxiety that young people carry with them everywhere they go that inhibits them from actually living full and free lives. And so when I got to Bennett, I didn't have to worry about whose home I was in because I lived on campus. I had one roommate and my roommate and I got along. When I got to Bennett, I didn't have to worry about if I was going to eat and when I was going to eat because I had a consistent meal plan, right? When I got to Bennett, I didn't have to worry about transportation because everything that I needed was on campus, and in the local community, you can walk there or ride a bike or even catch the local buses that were free because I was a student at Bennett, right? And so when I start looking at this backwards now as somebody who is, who has gone through that system, but has also been a classroom teacher. And I also, after I left the classroom, went to work in a nonprofit, an education nonprofit in the Silicon Valley that focuses on getting foster youth to and through high school and college or some post-secondary. And I worked with young people that were pushed out. So the people on my caseload were 16 through 24 who were disconnected from school either through pregnancy or incarceration or through criminal justice involvement or gang involvement or any combination of the like. And so they had been out of school, never earned a high school diploma. And my job was to help them re-engage with school, earn that secondary certificate, and find a post-secondary pathway for them. And some of the biggest challenges with that particular demographic that I learned in my role there were that they lacked transportation. They didn't have childcare. They didn't have, didn't know where their next meals were going to come from. So they came to all the community events that provided meals, right? And so when I started working with young people to help remove some of those barriers, and we were the same age at that time, many of them, I was in the same age bracket. I was 23 when I started working there. And so I'm realizing, some of the things that you are challenged with now is because you didn't have a safe environment to actually come into adulthood. And what HBCUs and colleges in general, but I'll get into why I think specifically HBCUs in a moment. But what that does is it creates a 4-year safety net where for most of the year, all of the stressors of your basic needs are suspended because it's provided through the university system. And that is the game changer for young people. That if we can get people in the communities and lives of foster youth to recognize that actually attending college on campus, and it has to be unique college, right? It has to be a college that's going to fit that young person, is a game changer for that young person's life outcomes. Okay. And so again, it was the first time I ever got a 4.0 because I actually got to focus in school. It was the first time I got to dream. It was the first time I got to imagine. And so I joined student leadership teams, right? I was a student leader orientation leader, a new student orientation leader, made the dean's list, right? Because I actually had the time and the space to do that. What's even more powerful, and one of the primary reasons why I recommend historically Black colleges, is because what a lot of people don't know is that they were founded when Black people did not have any other place to learn, right? Black people were not allowed to go to school, weren't allowed to enroll in the traditional university systems. And so schools were created so that Black people can have a shot at higher education. And so what they have now evolved into are learning spaces that welcome anybody. And specifically when it comes to young people in care, that's a very unique opportunity because what I have found in working with the clients that I worked with who were across the spectrum, ethnically, racially, and emotionally, psychologically, they were across the spectrum at a very diverse caseload. What many of them explained to me is that they feel highly uncomfortable in white spaces. Historically, Black colleges are twofold for a young person who might not be Black. So for Black students, they're great places. You also have to spend some time really thinking about which schools are best for which students. So that's where the research and stuff comes in at. But for students who do not have African ancestry, what it does is it puts them in an environment of a high producing environment of other people of color, other minorities that they can learn from, grow with. We also know in this society, Black history, Black culture is not celebrated. It's not, we just have a lot of issues with how we talk about race in this country. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why HBCUs are not seriously considered when we're looking at the college options for young people because of our own systemic racism, institutionalized racism in this country. And so for a young person entering into that system, what it does is actually provides them a firsthand experience, educational journey, where they understand the history, the contributions, and the plight of Black Americans in this country, while also being themselves in that environment too. And so it's a mutual exchange. But what I really love about it is that you end up building these lifelong relationships. So on this slide, you'll see that when I went to Harvard, I was there with one of my Bennett sisters, right? This is Usha, she graduated. This is our graduation picture. These are all Bennett Bells who came to visit us. You know, one of my friends got married. I was at, a few of my friends have been at several Bennett Bell weddings, right? There's one of them had a baby. We all pull up for the baby. We do business together. This was at a short course that we designed at our HBCU. And so these environments actually stimulate lifelong connections that many foster youth, some of them will never make if they're not in academic environments, because once they matriculate through adulthood, they kind of get further and further away of building the skills to actually cultivate rich and meaningful relationships, lifelong relationships. Many young people coming out of the system, we have trust issues. We don't trust everybody. Sometimes we self-sabotage, and sometimes we just are expecting, the worst. We know that it's not going to last long. And so one of the things that I can say in looking back at my experience at an historically Black college is that these relationships have transcended time, business, and major life events. And so I think that that's really, really, really important when we're talking about building networks for foster youth. That is the single-handedly one of the most powerful gifts that I ever got from my experience, was building that network. When I got dropped off, this guy dropped me off. He was, this is my social worker, Brian. This is my graduation picture from Bennett College. And this is my graduation picture from Harvard College. And so Harvard University. And so looking back at this, when I got dropped off at Bennett, Brian, he explains this story about him sitting in the chapel, because we're United Methodist related, about him sitting in the chapel with all these Black moms and Black aunts, and he's a gay man, white man from San Francisco, and how they were like, yeah, when your girl, we're going to take care of your girls, we're going to love on your daughters. And one of the messages that HBCUs deliver, one of my professors said this, he said, when young people go to traditional colleges, or what we would call PWI, predominantly white institution, the promise to your child is you're going to leave with a job, right? A career. When a young person is dropped off at a historically Black college, the promise to parents is you're going to leave with a family. And why that is so powerful is because family transcends career opportunities, right? And so because people are making deep and meaningful relationships at these institutions, anywhere you go, whether you went to Bennett College or Morehouse or Spelman or North Carolina A&T, which is the largest HBCU right across the street from Bennett College, one of the smallest HBCUs, anywhere you go, regardless of what school you go to, you're a part of the grander HBCU network. So when people see it on your resume, or when you're out in the world, that HBCU network will carry that young person. And so these are really important elements when it comes to setting a young person who's exiting foster care up for life. And these are the things that we under consider. So he's sitting, him getting that message, and all the moms and the aunties being like, I know that's right, with their fans in the middle of the summertime in North Carolina. And he just kind of looked around like, yeah, that's right. So just thinking about all of the ways that that HBCUs kind of cultivate young people. And so I'm going to pause right here, because I want to take some questions from folks, and I know that's coming up, and I have some other experiences that I think are also helpful for foster youth to experience, and some other benefits, like economic benefits to doing this. So we'll talk about that momentarily, but I want to just go ahead and, hey, Tony, good to see you. I just want to go ahead and just open it up for questions and dialogue and what's coming to mind right now as we're talking. Welcome, Amy.
I just want to let everyone know you can either type your questions in the chat or you can take yourself off of mute. That's set up to allow you to do that as well. So either way.
And it's okay if you don't, or so anything comes to mind later, but feel free. I just want to create some space, and feel free to drop it in the chat, and we can, I can go from there as well. Because I also want to make sure, where are you all calling from? Like, what organizations do you work for? Are you in direct service? Are you a foster parent? If you can drop that in the chat, that's also really helpful in terms of providing the proper feedback and how you might support a young person in care. So go ahead and drop that in the chat. And then that'll help me. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to just go ahead and highlight a few of the things. So number one, HBCUs offer foster youth an opportunity to thrive in a number of different ways. Number one, like I said, it creates that day-to-day stability. And actually, my freshman year, and this was something that I talk to young people about all the time as well. And as we talk about how to support foster youth in care, there's a whole thing around like how you want to set up those conversations so that they feel sufficiently prepared. And so one of the things that I remember telling my family, because at the time we always got family drama going on, right? I told you already historically what the impact has been on our family. And so we constantly have residual just conflict, with the law, with systems, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember being on the phone with my great aunt, who I spent most of my childhood with. And I remember being on the phone with her, and she was telling me yet another story about something that I just could not handle emotionally. I was like, I don't have the capacity for this while I'm in school. And I remember telling her that day, like, do not call me with any more family drama. I don't want to hear it. Cut it off. It's done. Right. I remember just being super, super explicit about that. And that was the last time she called with any more family drama. Every other time she was talking about other things or asking me questions. But that was something that I had to literally name for her, because with young people in care, we absorb people's problems all the time, right? Because a lot of times we're coming from families, or we're coming from systems, or we're coming from situations where we don't have any control. So we just got to cope with it and deal with it, right? And so I'm in this new environment where I'm being incubated. That's what I like to call it. It's an incubator. I do not have time to be managing family drama and trauma. And that was the last time she called. And because of that, I was able to study abroad in China. Because of that, I was able to take full advantage of having an internship, a paid internship, every single summer while I was in school, which is also something that I highly recommend. I tell young people all the time, if you're in foster care, people love a young person who's in school. Everybody expects a college student to be broke, right? And so you go there when you have things that you want to raise money for, things you need support for. People are more inclined to support a young person who's working towards their goals. But when you're in survival mode, oftentimes that doesn't click. And so that's why conversations like these are important, because you all get to go back and hold the mirror up and remind young people, like, no, like this is only a moment in time, right? And so that's really important. It also provides a safe community. I chose the HBCU. I chose an all women's college. And that for me was super important. And even thinking about it now, like at the time, there was moments where I was like, this school is boring, or we don't have enough here. But 100%, it is the very first place that I learned how to really hone communication skills. At Bennett College, we had at HBCUs in general, it's kind of expected that young people there are going to be student leaders, because our history is rooted in civil rights and leadership. And so every school, so young people who have been marginalized, who've never learned how to tell their story, who, when you ask them, what do they want to do? They say, I don't know, because they never had the opportunity to think about it. Those kind of young people would thrive in a space like HBCUs because of the diversity of young people who are finding their voice, and the institution is designed to hone those skills in young people. And so I had a lot of public speaking engagement, just being a student leader in school, that like at the time, it's just the culture here. But now seeing time behind me, I recognize how helpful that's been in my career. And then again, transformational opportunities such as being able to study abroad. In the video, that video that was shot that I played at the beginning, I was selected to be a part of that video because I was achieving. I literally was just achieving, and they were like, we like her hustle and her story is interesting and she's really working hard. So this organization, the United Negro College Fund, they provide scholarships to HBCU students at member institutions. So Bennett was one of the institutions, and every year they have their largest fundraiser with that airs on BET, and it's like a telethon. So all of like our favorite celebrities will perform a song, and the people in between, we see montages of young people who are at these HBCUs, and then people will call in and raise money. It's the largest fundraiser of the year, but it's also like a cultural staple in Black communities, UNCF Evening of Stars. So I got recommended to do that, but what that was able to do so I had that when we shot that, I was on my way to China that like literally weeks later. So I had a summer internship through UNCF that I was able to get while I was at Bennett College, at Oracle Corporation, and learned a lot while I was there, got paid extremely well. I think my checks were maybe $6,000 or something like that. Maybe it was about $4,000 every 2 weeks for a young person in college. And they provided my housing. They gave me a car, and they gave me a $10,000 scholarship, that program. Right. And so that was one program that I did. And then I was able to use that money to support my work when I studied abroad in China. I didn't pay any extra money out of pocket. My same financial aid covered my abroad living experiences, my abroad living expenses. It covered my tuition, and I studied abroad through NYU. So literally having these opportunities is simply because I had the stability and a safe community to actually imagine that, like, when I had ideas, I had the capacity to do it. And when we talk about young people exiting care, and I'll show you another video that I recently did at the Kelly Clarkson show that aired last week. When we talk about like my life outcomes, a lot, when I visit family and friends and people I've grown up with, a lot of people are like, man, you made it, or you really did, you know, you're really out there doing it and achieving. And I do appreciate that, right? And I appreciate the validation and the and just the affirmation. But what's even more devastating about it, and the reason why it's such a big deal when people see that, is because for the vast majority of foster youth, they will never have that experience, simply because all of their options were not presented to them. The options that we typically present to foster youth are the ones that work for us socially, to say that we did it, to say that they got into this college, to say that they made it, right? It doesn't really always work for foster youth. That's why they drop out. That's why they're not, that's why they're not staying. They're not persisting. And so in this conversation around education access, it's important that we start examining our own beliefs and understandings around why HBCUs are not included in that conversation, and how we need to start exploring them to give young people a true purview of all of their options. And there's also Hispanic universities as well. There are single sex universities, there are small colleges, there are big colleges, right? This is not a one size fits all. And I know in California, we usually like to default to CSUs, UCs, and community colleges. Those are three options, right? And then we wonder why young people don't stick to it, because we ain't giving them all the options. And so again, it provides an opportunity to dream. I'm gonna go ahead and check the chat really quickly. And actually, let me go ahead and share this.
I can read the questions out to you if that would
please do.
Be helpful. Okay, cool. So this is one that somebody sent me. So one question is, what advice would you give to states that don't have HBCUs to help students learn about opportunities for attending an HBCU?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Every state doesn't have HBCUs, right? And so a lot of the times when you go to HBCUs, a lot of the students are not from that state. And so really it is about, first and foremost, just engaging in research, like actively researching yourself, what HBCUs are, why they were founded, who are some of the alum, right? When I got to Bennett, I knew Oprah went to an HBCU. She went to Tennessee. I wanted to have my own talk show. And they said, well, what do you want to major in? I knew nothing about majors, knew nothing about anything. Nobody ever prepped me for this, right? So I was just like, whatever Oprah majored in, like, that's what I'm gonna major in, right? And so they put me in journalism, which is actually what Oprah majored in, but I've also had all these experiences in media now because of that particular moment, right? And so actually doing the research to understand, like, what are the different HBCUs? Some schools offer some things that other schools don't, being kind of, you're not going to be an expert in everything, right? But just knowing, just getting a soft understanding of what it is and its importance and its cultural importance to us. The second thing is they have Black college tours. And so I would look up, and I have a contact for one of the Black college tours. You can talk to, so there are two things: Black college tours where young people can actually go on the tour, and they'll go for, some of them are weekends, some of them are a week long, whatever it is. Some of them are 2 weeks long, where they'll go and it's an immersive experience where they'll go to some museums, they'll check out some schools, and they're actually like having a cultural experience with other kids away. Then there's Black College Expo, which is a contact I can share with you, Amy, as well. And you can reach out to the organizers of the Black College Expo and see what you can do if you collaborate with other organizations in your community to have them come to your city. And so that's really important. And then the other piece I would say is actually urging the institutions and organizations that you work at to make this a part of their lexicon, right? Like, this is, the thing is, we're not talking about it because people aren't viewing it as a, well, I mean, I think some people understand it, but I think more in the West, and you get that a lot in the South because that's where they're concentrated. Like, people kind of get it in the South. On the coasts, it's just not a lot of conversations happening about it. And so a lot of young people will know about it, but don't know about it, right? And then there's a movie that I would recommend. It's really mostly for entertainment, but Drumline is how many years old. It features Zoe Saldana and Nick Cannon. That movie is an adaptation based on North Carolina A&T, which has one of the livest bands you'll ever hear in your life. And so it says Atlanta A&T in the movie, but that movie is based on North Carolina A&T, which is the largest HBCU, and it's an incredible HBCU, one of the top producers of Black engineers in this country. And so North Carolina A&T, I will watch that movie just to get a feel, like, what does it feel like? You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I would recommend in terms of starting to have those conversations around HBCUs. That's a great question.
Great, thank you. Maya posted a question. I think we might have just kind of answered that one, though. What do you think, Maya? What's kind of some of the ways to help decide about what might be a good fit for students that you're working with? But let's see. So Tony, do you want to just take yourself off mute and instead of me just reading what you said? You don't have to, but either way.
Yes, sorry, I just wrote a book. You shouldn't have to read that. I was like spending 10 minutes typing it, so sorry about that. Yeah, hi, thank you so much for all the great information. I really appreciate getting to meet you today and hearing about all of this. What I wrote was pretty long, but basically I'm a sociology at Texas State University, and we are a fairly diverse university. We're an HSI, and about 10 years ago, we started a support program for students who'd experienced foster care. So I've been working with that program for years as a mentor and as a researcher, and we've had a lot of success, but what we're always trying to do is build that community that you're talking about. And sort of trying to understand, I mean, we have 37,000 students at the university. It is diverse, but I don't know, it's just that family that you speak of that sort of comes with your university, HBCUs, and in general, we're trying to do a better job of building things like that here. But I would love any ideas you have. And then my second part of my question was about, we're diverse in terms of undergrad students, but we aren't in our graduate program. So I really want more students who've experienced foster care to go on to grad school and for us to have more diverse grad programs. So that's the second part.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna ask the second part first because that's what's fresh right now because my mind is ping pongs. Less than 1% of foster youth will go on to graduate school and earn a graduate degree, which is really sad. And it's obviously not because foster youth aren't capable, but it's that fall off that we talk about over years post high school that just it just gets worse, right? Like foster youth are more likely to experience homelessness right after emancipation. Foster youth are more likely to experience health complications later down the line because of lifestyle, you know, whether they're explicit choices or just the only thing that young people had left, right? And so foster youth are more likely to experience teen pregnancy. So there are all these different things that can derail a young person. And so that number, that percentage of young people that make it out of high school and then make it to some post-secondary program and then finish the post-secondary program and then figure out what they want to do after that and then maybe go straight to school or employment and then come back to school, whatever that process is, there's just so much time and life happening. Because the thing that people forget is that you can emancipate out of foster care, but your first generation problems don't dissipate just because you earn a degree, right? And so like for me, when I got ready to go to graduate school, it was very difficult to figure out if I was going to go to business school, how was I going to pay for it? You know what I'm saying? If I was going to go to business school, how was I going to prepare for it? If I was going to go to law school, who was going to pay, you know, all this money for me to, you know, take whatever tests I need to take or prep courses that I need to take. So there are like real barriers to accessing an advanced degree that foster youth experience, because most degree earning programs are not designed to support an individual, an adult person who still is carrying the or is still recovering from whatever life has happened, right? And so if you are looking to recruit folks into your grad programs and make it more diverse, get more foster youth in there, I do have a contact at Davis, who her name is Dr. Sylvia Sensifer, and she's been doing this work in trying to get foster youth in higher education. And in fact, I got introduced to her when I was working with foster youth after the classroom. And had it not been for her, I got ready to take a business course. I couldn't pay that money for it, but she allowed me to, she had some money through this program that she's doing because she wants more foster youth to get to graduate school. So it covered my course. And I realized in that course, I wasn't going to business school, didn't want to do it, can't see myself doing it. No. And that was a very important $1,500 well spent, because I know that this is not going to be a good investment for me long term. But there need to be more programs like that, or more opportunities like that, where foster youth can dream. When foster youth dream, it usually comes at a cost. We usually have to compromise something. We usually have to do something. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want this information? You want a gift card? Come to my 1 hour workshop. You want, we can give you some feedback if you want a $5 Amazon card. Like, we have to stop treating people's life options like that and really understand what the real barriers are that are inhibiting people from accessing higher education, and design programs that make that onboarding easier for people. And I think that's the attitude, is that like, well, you have a bachelor's degree, you learn, like, you're an adult person now, your problems dissipate, and that's just not true, right? So there's that. And what was the first question again?
Just to how to build a sense of community.
Yes, how to build a sense of community. And what is the demographic? Are these like first gen? Are they all foster youth? Are they?
Well, for our program, they're all students who've been in foster care. Yes. Okay. And the university as a whole, though, also is a more diverse university. We're a Hispanic serving institution. We're 50% first gen. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to help students, sort of create, a new culture that doesn't feel like traditional higher ed. But we're just, 100%. As a university, struggling to figure out what are the steps to create that sense of community for students who've been in foster care, and even for students of color and students who are first gen.
Yep. And one of the main things that I will say, when you're building a community, and particularly when you're working with young people in care, we don't like things to feel systemized, even though we know in academic institutions things are systemized. But like, if you, as many opportunities as you can create that feel natural, is where I would go first. So movie nights, group outings, bowling, opportunities to really like build natural friendships is important. And then there's the other piece to that would go in tandem, and that's like more of the development opportunities. So maybe there are workshops that people come to, and maybe after the workshop, maybe it's a work dinner, right? People come, they get some food, they socialize, You know what I'm saying? And they get an hour worth of programming, right? So like really building in a naturalness in all of your programming and development, making sure that you are asking at the end of every single one, what did you love? What do you want to get? What do you hate? What would you want to do away with? What did we do that was too much? Giving them the opportunity to share that, because then that communicates to them that you're responsive and that you're taking their feedback and that their voice and opinion matter. And so doing that at the end of every one, whether it's in a quick format, maybe it's a digital thing they can do on their phone before they leave, whatever, but building that in is really important. And then one of the most important things that you can offer to foster youth is really bringing in like powerful contacts that lead to potential mentorship. So like the big life gap that like foster youth experience is that we do not have and really this is one of the most important things that has carried me is like we don't really know how to initiate relationships outside of like me needing something to survive, right? So it's like, because most of the people that have been implanted in my life are people who are providing a service, right? And so finding opportunities to build natural areas of mentorship. So as they're navigating life, because here's the thing, right? The idea is that like your natural parents couldn't take care of you. So the system is going to stand in to be your natural parent. But what happens is they don't get taken care of well, even with the system, right? And so, and then you age out of the system. So this temporary guardian is now gone, but these are young people still having to navigate life where most people would go to their parents for all those life turns and curves and stuff. Foster youth do not have that. So many foster youth are just spiraling because they literally don't have any guidance. There's like no guidance. I don't have anybody I can trust because everybody that I was supposed to trust was associated with the system. That's a scary place to be, you know? And so building into your program opportunities to bring in folks who can invest time and are open to like cultivating real relations and even thinking about these individual students. I don't know how many people are in the program, but designing a cohort style where they get to know each other in group. You know, maybe you have stuff that y'all do together, but you have other things that the cohorts will do together to build the trust, the community, the sense of camaraderie. And then even thinking about who individually would be good for Tony, who individually would be good for Richard, who individually would be good for Rosalie, who individually would be good for Lori. Like think about who you know in the university network that might be good to kind of champion a young person that they would jive with, so that they'll have that when you leave, because you take those relationships with you. So so that's what I would say about that. And that I really, it can't be understated. Like when I got ready to go to graduate school, there's no money for foster youth going to school. So I took out an $80,000 loan so that I can go to graduate school. Will I pay it? I don't know. Maybe one day student loan debt will be canceled. Who knows? It's all up in the air. Maybe we'll get to reparations eventually. Who knows? Right? But the village came through. When I posted that I got into Harvard, and actually my a couple of my line sisters, I'm in a sorority, historically Black sorority, they made a page, wrote a little bio, and all the money that I raised, I was able to live freely without thinking about day-to-day expenses while I was in graduate school. Most of those people that gave were people that I had known formally. When I started teaching in the classroom and didn't have any money as a recent college graduate who moved to Miami-Dade, like the people that came through were all the people that I met in my internships, were all the people that I went to Bennett College with. When I graduated Harvard, I moved to Chicago for a brief period to open up a media arts center for Black girls and women on the South Side. The person that gave me that position while I was figuring out what I wanted to do was the director of my program when I was in undergrad. You know what I'm saying? So like learning how to hone relationships is the most important piece in like surviving and navigating life professionally. And young people do not have that skill because they have learned and have adapted to not trusting anybody. So being able to infuse that intentionally in your program, I think would go a really long way.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I know I'm really long-winded. What other questions do we have?
It's perfect.
Awesome.
We don't have other questions in the chat, but I want to see if anybody else who's attending just wants to take themselves off mute for any additional questions.
or any thoughts that are coming through your mind right now? I know we covered a lot. Okay, so I will say on the financial piece, I do want to share this element because I think it's important in planning. When I was in high school, the narrative was, well, you're in foster care, so you don't have to pay for school. That I heard that for literally the whole time I was in foster care. Right? I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't have to pay for school. That was the narrative that I just assumed because that's what I had heard like my whole life. I got ready to apply to college and I learned that's actually not true. This is false. It's a falsehood. Okay. But what people mean is that because you're in care, you'll get maximum financial aid. That does not mean that you're not paying for anything. It just means that you won't pay anything right away. Right. And so when I got to Bennett, my financial aid covered, I got the maximum grant, the Pell Grant. I got I didn't have to take out any additional loans. And I think that's what people mean, like any private loans. I didn't have to do that. But even the money that I was getting from financial aid did not cover my tuition, the whole tuition. So my freshman year, I actually had a gap. And like you saw in that video, I had an emergency UNCF scholarship came through and that's what covered it. So what a lot of young people don't realize is that you will get the maximum financial aid, but if your institution costs more, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to pay that. So what young people can do, if you're in California, there are all kinds of funding, like the Chafee grant. There's, there's all kinds of funding opportunities for people in California and other states. I would look at small, like nonprofits who are offering scholarships and things like that to supplement. There's like a big scholarship book that comes out every year. You can get it from like Barnes and Noble. I don't recommend anybody buy it because it's going to be dated by next year, but I would go and just look through all the different scholarships, take a picture of the ones that you want to highlight because it'll have like where you should, apply and who should apply for this kind of scholarship. I would just engage in that and engage young people in that scholarship process before they get to college. Because that was a conversation that we weren't really I didn't really get into until I got to college when I had to figure out how I was going to close that gap. But that is available to young people. If you're if you are emancipating at 21, but you're graduating at 18, that gives you 3 years, 3 years. It gives you 3 years to receive care from the state while you're in school. So if you're living on campus, and that's covered through your financial aid, but the state actually covers some of your living expenses, that's money that you can now pocket to live, right? So strategizing in that way. When I graduated from Bennett College, I was 21. I went straight to Miami-Dade, where I taught for a few years. I didn't learn until I moved back to California that a lot of the housing programs, if you were a former foster youth, you are eligible for until you're 24 at 100%. And they'll give you gas and they'll give you groceries, like a grocery stipend. Had I known that at 21, I would have asked Teach for America. That's who I taught through. I would have had them move me back to California at 21. And I would have had my housing covered and all the money that I made as a full-time teacher, I could have leveraged and saved, right? And so knowing like what options are available to young people, like financially is important because there are a lot of ways that you can hack it if a young person is still in care or newly emancipated. And so I would just really think about like, what's the best way to leverage housing where you can see more money in your pocket, where you can save more, because those are the skills and conversations that they have to have earlier on that we're not really having with them because the bar is kind of low with what we just expect everybody to go straight to community college. And so that way I could have easily saved $40,000 in my 2 years there, right? Because my housing would have been covered. But I didn't know that until after I had like only 6 months left. So that's an important thing on the finances, is that there are definitely ways to fund the college experience, but also the post-college experience for a young person who goes straight to university. Does that make sense? Okay, because I know there's a lot of information. Yeah, so that's what I will say about that. I would love to know, what questions do you still have? You can drop in the chat, or what's a takeaway that you're leaving with today? What are you thinking about? Feel free to drop that in the chat. That's helpful feedback for me in terms of knowing, what resonates with folks when we're talking about these conversations around HBCUs. I'm also going to drop my information in the chat, and you can feel free to reach out to me if you have additional questions. Like, I'm happy to dialogue about this. But yeah, feel free to go ahead and drop in. What is the one takeaway that you're leaving with? I see Lori says program manager, support for foster youth. Okay. And a foster parent. Awesome. I work on in a campus supervising program. We have a lot of higher ed in here, which is awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, and Amina, you're in Atlanta. Okay, and Maya, we got your questions. Yep. Yes, okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop my information in there. Amy says putting in some extra time to learn about HBCU opportunities can be really beneficial to the students we work with. Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, for reflecting that. Amina says, I love the discussion around building community as well as connecting young people with scholarship resources. Yeah, that's a big one, Amina. Like, that one is huge, because the young people that I worked with, that was I was like, we're the same age, but what the difference is, I've learned how to cultivate community, right? They haven't had the opportunity to cultivate that. And so HBCUs and I didn't realize that was happening in real time, right? I just went to school. But by going to school, I had internships. I studied abroad. All the people that showed up to my 30th birthday, they were all people I went to college with, people I studied abroad with, people I taught with. It was like this combination of community that I've collected along the way, but I learned how to do that in that safe academic environment. And young people deserve that. They deserve to feel like they're a part of something. So yeah, thank you so much for reflecting that back on me, and I appreciate that. Any more ideas? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I'm gonna share one more video with you all before we log off, because this is, let's see if I can pull it up. All right. And again, just to emphasize why, like, just, and these stats are, have shifted a little bit, but not by much. And so to emphasize why this conversation is so important, small colleges, colleges that are based around ethnic identities, colleges where minorities will thrive, colleges, single sex colleges, like, I highly recommend those small curated learning environments for some of those foster youth that are a little bit more on edge, right? And then the other ones that are like, they ready, send them to the big schools, right? Have all kind of stuff, send them to the A&Ts. But there's something for everyone, and I can't stress enough the value that small, intimate experience does for young people. And at my institution at Bennett, a lot of the young people there, it was so diverse, and yet there was a specific demographic of young people who were drawn to Bennett because of whatever life happened to them. And so you'll notice that at Bennett College, people evolve into the best parts of who they were, but there's this phrase, I didn't choose Bennett, Bennett chose me. And so a lot of people who have transcended their environments, shifted their economic life outcomes for themselves and their families because they had that nurturing, what many foster youth do not have. So I can't stress that enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and just play this. And again, this aired last week, and I'll drop the link as well. But this is really just emphasizes the point that this can be achieved by the young people that we love and support.
I like this kid. Friendship. That was Free by British rockers Rudimental with Emily Sande. Delrisha in our audience requested that one. So what's your connection to Free? Oh, I like your dress.
Oh, thank you. I like yours too.
Oh, thank you.
You
love
serving
red.
today, sis.
Red is a good color.
Thank you.
It's very powerful.
It's my power color. Thank you for
Me
noticing.
too. Okay.
Yes. This song hits a lot of notes for me. So not only is it Women's History Month and women are constantly defining and redefining who we are in our families, at work, in the community, and what freedom looks like for us. But on a personal level, I emancipated out of the foster care system after my first semester in college. I'm from California. In the state of California, less than 50% of foster youth will graduate high school. And I went straight to the oldest historically Black college for women in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I was the less than 2% of foster youth that earned a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm also a recent graduate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I earned my master's in education policy and management.
Okay.
And when I think about this song, it really just reminds us that, you know, you can have, life happens and it's going to continue to happen to all of us. And we're not tethered to the experiences that happen to us. They're more so like passengers that help us along the way in our decision making. And so when I think of this song, it just is a great reminder to keep pushing and find freeness and freedom wherever you are, whatever state. And like the song says, I'm just trying to find my way.
Oh my God. You should write a book.
Thank you.
I would.
So I'm gonna pause that there, and I'll share that link. But that was really fun. I also did not request that song, but I was prompted to pretend like I did. But yeah, I really firmly believe that, you know, that these babies are not tethered to their life experiences, and we need to be doing everything in our power to expose them to the best of what their lives can be. And I think that by including historically Black colleges in that conversation, we might be narrowing a gap around community and self-expression and identity that traditional schools don't do as well, because they don't serve a majority minority population. And so I am just super happy to have been here with you. Lori, I appreciate your comments. You said so much I'm walking away with. Thank you for this time. Building and nurturing that sense of community and belonging is one of the things we lead with in all we do. I love that. And so thank you all for being here. And again, feel free to reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Delrisha. That was amazing. I really appreciate your talking with us about your experiences and giving us some insight into what we might do in our practice. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Just like with all of our webinars, we'll post the recording as well as the PowerPoints on the NRC FAHE website and on our YouTube page. And I hope to see you all at a future webinar. Thanks, everyone.